I was walking on clouds, or so I thought. My life seemed perfect, like one of those cheesy rom-coms where everything just falls into place. I'm Samantha Reed, 29 years old, and I teach PE at the local high school. I love my job. Helping kids stay fit and healthy gives me a real sense of purpose. But the real cherry on top, my husband, Jack. Jack's a sports journalist, 31, and damn good at his job. We met at a charity run 4 years ago, and it was like the universe conspired to bring us together. Both of us love sports, had a wicked sense of humor, and couldn't keep our hands off each other. We got married last year, and I honestly thought I'd hit the jackpot. Our routine was simple, but perfect. Mornings were a rush of coffee and quick kisses before we headed off to work. Evenings were our time. We'd cook together, watch whatever game was on TV, and just be. Weekends were for long runs, lazy brunches, and catching up with friends. Life was good, you know. I remember this one time, about 6 months ago, when I twisted my ankle during a demonstration in class. Jack dropped everything at work to come pick me up. He carried me to the car, drove me to the hospital, and stayed with me through the whole X-ray ordeal. That night, he set up a mini cinema in our living room, complete with my favorite snacks and a marathon of my guilty pleasure, cheesy dance movies. That's the kind of guy I thought I married. Attentive, caring, and always there when I needed him. Our friends used to joke that we were that annoying couple who were still in the honeymoon phase. We'd finish each other's sentences, laugh at inside jokes no one else got, and couldn't keep our hands off each other. I used to blush and laugh it off, but deep down, I was proud. Proud that I'd found my person. You know, I threw myself into being the best wife I could be. I'd surprise Jack with tickets to games, cook his favorite meals, and always made sure to be his biggest cheerleader. When he got a promotion at work, I organized a surprise party with all our friends. The look on his face when he walked in, pure joy and love. That's the moment I keep coming back to. I thought we were solid, unbreakable, the kind of couple others looked up to. We had our little squabbles, sure, but nothing major. We always made up before bed, usually with a good makeout session and whispered, "I love yous." Looking back, I guess I was naive, too trusting. But isn't that what love is supposed to be? Trust, support, and believing in the best of your partner? I never thought I'd have a reason to doubt Jack. He was my rock, my best friend, my lover, my everything. If only I'd known then what I know now. Maybe I could have seen the signs earlier. Maybe I could have protected my heart better. But that's the thing about love, isn't it? It makes you blind. And boy, was I blind, but I'm getting ahead of myself. At this point in our story, I was still blissfully unaware of what was coming. I was just Samantha Reed, happily married PE teacher living what I thought was my best life. If only I'd known that my perfect little world was about to come crashing down around me. I guess the first time I noticed something was off was about 3 months ago. Jack had always been dedicated to his job, but suddenly it seemed like he was working even longer hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. I mean, being a sports journalist isn't exactly a 9-to-5 gig, right? One night, I was curled up on the couch, waiting for Jack to come home. We'd planned to watch the playoffs together, but he was running late. When he finally walked in, he looked different. His hair was messed up, and he smelled like he'd just showered. Sorry, babe," he said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "Got held up at work. You wouldn't believe the chaos in the newsroom tonight." I nodded, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. "It's okay. I recorded the game. We can still watch it together." He hesitated for a second. "Actually, I'm pretty beat. Rain check?" That was the first time he'd ever turned down watching a game with me. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being silly. But looking back, that was the moment things started to change. After that night, I started noticing little things. Jack was always on his phone, but now he'd turn it face down when I walked into the room. He'd step out to take calls, his voice hushed. Once I caught a glimpse of his screen, a text from someone named Sarah with a winking emoji. When I asked who Sarah was, he quickly said it was a new intern at work. Just helping her learn the ropes, he explained with a shrug. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But doubt had started to creep in, like a shadow I couldn't shake. Then there was the night of our anniversary. We'd always made a big deal out of it. But this year, Jack seemed distracted. We went out to dinner at our favorite restaurant, but he spent half the time checking his phone. Everything okay? I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Yeah, he said, not even looking up. Just some work stuff. I reached across the table and took his hand. Hey, it's our night. Can't work. Wait. He looked at me then, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, regret, but then it was gone, replaced by that charming smile I fell in love with. You're right, he said, putting his phone away. I'm all yours tonight. But even as we laughed and talked over dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. The changes weren't just in his behavior. Jack started dressing differently too. New clothes, expensive cologne. He even started going to the gym more often. Part of me was thrilled my husband was taking care of himself. But another part wondered, why the sudden change? One Saturday morning, I woke up to find Jack already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter, early assignment, back tonight, love you. It wasn't unusual for him to work weekends, but something felt off. I tried to distract myself, cleaning the house, grading papers, but my mind kept wandering. Why hadn't he mentioned this assignment before? Why didn't he wake me up to say goodbye like he usually did? That afternoon, I decided to surprise him at work. I picked up some sandwiches from our favorite deli and headed to the news station. But when I got there, the receptionist looked confused. Jack Reed, he's not here today. I thought it was his day off. My heart sank. I mumbled something about mixed signals and practically ran out of there. On the drive home, my mind was racing. Where was he? Why did he lie? When Jack came home that night, I was waiting. He walked in, looking surprised to see me up. Hey, how was work? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He hesitated for a split second before answering. Busy. You know how it is during playoff season. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but fear held me back, fear of what those answers might be. That night, as Jack slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger was sleeping next to me, and I had no idea what to do about it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was reading too much into things. Jack loved me. We were happy, weren't we? But as I finally drifted off to sleep, one thought kept echoing in my mind. Something's not right, and I need to find out what it is. As the weeks went by, those little doubts I'd been having, they started growing, like weeds in a garden. They just kept spreading no matter how much I tried to ignore them. Jack's behavior was becoming more and more, suspicious. There was this one night, about a month after our weird anniversary dinner. We were supposed to watch the championship game together. It was our thing, you know. We'd get all comfy on the couch, break out the snacks, and cheer for our team. But Jack called at the last minute, saying he had to cover an unexpected press conference. I'm so sorry, babe, he said, his voice crackling over the phone. You know how it is. Breaking news waits for no one. I tried to hide my disappointment. Yeah, I get it. It's fine. I'll just watch it with the girls from work. That's my girl, he said, sounding relieved. I'll make it up to you, I promise. But here's the thing. When I turned on the TV to watch the game, guess who I saw in the crowd? Jack. He was right there, clear as day, sitting in the stands. My heart dropped to my stomach. Why would he lie about where he was? I called him immediately, my hands shaking. It went straight to voicemail. I texted him, saw you at the game. What's going on? No response. When he finally came home, way past midnight, I was waiting up. He looked surprised to see me. Hey, what are you still doing up? He asked, trying to sound casual. I cut right to the chase. I saw you at the game, Jack, on TV. Why did you lie about where you were?" He froze for a second. Then his face relaxed into an easy smile. "Oh, yeah. There was a last-minute change of plans. The press conference got canceled, and my boss scored some tickets. I thought it'd be good for networking, you know." It sounded plausible, but something didn't sit right. "And you couldn't have called to let me know?" He shrugged. "My phone died. I'm sorry, babe. I should have found a way to reach you." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But that nagging feeling in my gut just wouldn't go away. After that night, I started paying more attention to everything Jack did. The way he'd always keep his phone face down, how he'd step out of the room to take calls, the late nights at work that were becoming more and more frequent. One day, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in Jack's pocket. It was for a fancy restaurant downtown, one we'd never been to together. The date on the receipt? It was from a night when Jack told me he was working late. My hands were shaking as I held that little piece of paper. It felt like evidence, you know, proof that something was really, really wrong. I confronted him about it that evening. "Jack, what's this?" I asked, holding up the receipt. He glanced at it, then back at me. "Oh, that. It was a work dinner with some potential sponsors. Didn't I mention it?" "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't." He came over and put his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Sam. Things have been so hectic at work lately. I must have forgotten to tell you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to melt into his arms like I always did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was lying. Again. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, while Jack slept soundly beside me. I couldn't stop thinking about all the little things that had been adding up. The missed calls. I was going to find out what was really going on, no matter what it took. "Have a great day," I said, giving him a kiss goodbye. He smiled, oblivious to the turmoil in my heart. "You too, babe. Love you." As soon as the door closed behind him, I sat down at our computer. My hands were shaking as I opened up the browser history. I felt guilty for snooping, but I needed to know. What I found made my blood run cold. Searches for how to hide text messages, best apps for secret conversations, and the final nail in the coffin, how to tell your wife you're leaving her. I shut the computer, feeling like I couldn't breathe. This was it. The proof I'd been looking for, but desperately hoping not to find. Jack was cheating on me. And from the looks of it, he was planning to leave me too. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to process what I'd discovered. How had we gotten here? What had I done wrong? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? As I heard Jack's key in the lock that evening, I took a deep breath. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. After that night, I knew I couldn't just sit around anymore. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. So, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating my own husband. It felt wrong, you know? Like I was betraying Jack's trust. But then I remembered all the lies, all the suspicions, and I knew I had to do this. For my own sanity, if nothing else. I started small. When Jack was in the shower one morning, I checked his phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type in the passcode, his birthday. At least that hadn't changed. But when I got in, I found nothing. No suspicious texts, no weird emails. It was clean, too clean, actually. It was like someone had gone through and deleted everything. That's when I remembered something I'd seen on a crime show once. I went into his phone settings and found the list of recently downloaded apps. And there it was, something called Vault Hide. I looked it up later. It's an app for hiding photos, messages, even entire conversations. My heart sank. Why would Jack need something like that unless he had something to hide? I didn't confront him about it, not yet. I needed more proof. Next, I started paying attention to his work schedule. Jack had always worked weird hours. It's part of being a sports journalist. But now, I started writing down when he said he'd be working late, or covering a game, or whatever excuse he gave. One night, he told me he had to cover a local basketball game. "Don't wait up," he said. kissing me on the cheek before heading out. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed my laptop and looked up the game schedule. There was no game that night. My hands were shaking as I closed the laptop. Where was he really going? I thought about following him, but the idea made me feel sick. Was this what our marriage had come to? Me sneaking around, spying on my own husband. But I needed to know. I couldn't live with this uncertainty anymore. So the next time Jack said he had a late night assignment, I decided to check it out. I told him I was going to bed early, but as soon as I heard his car pull out of the driveway, I got dressed and grabbed my keys. I followed him at a distance, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. He didn't go to the news station. Instead, he drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, full of fancy restaurants and upscale bars. I watched as he parked his car and walked into one of the restaurants. Through the window, I could see him greet someone, a woman. She was tall, blonde, gorgeous, everything I'm not. They hugged, and it wasn't a quick, friendly hug, it lingered. I felt like I was going to throw up. I sat in my car for hours, watching them through the window. They were laughing, talking, leaning in close to each other. At one point, he reached across the table and took her hand. It was like watching my worst nightmare come to life. When they finally left the restaurant, I ducked down in my seat, praying Jack wouldn't see me. They walked to her car and then they kissed. It wasn't a friendly peck on the cheek, it was passionate, intimate, the kind of kiss we used to share. I don't remember driving home. I just remember sitting in our driveway, feeling numb. It was real. All my suspicions, all my fears, they were all true. Jack was cheating on me. I went inside and poured myself a glass of wine. Then another, and another. By the time Jack got home, I was halfway through the bottle. "Hey, baby," he said, sounding surprised to see me up. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." I looked at him, this man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, this man who had just shattered my heart into a million pieces. And I said, "How was the game?" He hesitated for just a second. "It was good. We won." I nodded, taking another sip of wine. "That's nice. And how was dinner with your blonde friend?" The color drained from his face. What are you talking about?" I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "I saw you, Jack, at the restaurant, with her. I saw everything." He started to say something, probably another lie, but I cut him off. Just don't. I can't hear any more lies." I got up, my legs shaky from the wine and the emotion. "I'm going to bed. We'll talk about this in the morning." As I walked past him, he reached out to touch my arm. "Sam, I can explain." I jerked away from him. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me." I went to bed alone that night, my pillow wet with tears. In the morning, I knew I'd have to face the reality of what my marriage had become. But for now, I let myself cry for the love I thought we had, for the future we'd planned, for the trust that was now broken beyond repair. As I drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling in my mind. What was I going to do now? The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heart full of dread. Jack was already gone, probably couldn't face me after last night. I called in sick to work. How could I stand in front of a class and pretend everything was normal when my whole world was falling apart? I spent the day in a daze, trying to make sense of everything. Part of me wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation for what I'd seen. Maybe she was just a colleague. Maybe I'd misinterpreted things. But deep down, I knew. The way they looked at each other, that kiss, it wasn't innocent. When Jack came home that evening, he looked like he hadn't slept. Good. At least I wasn't the only one suffering. "Sam," he started, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk about last night." I nodded, steeling myself. "Yeah, we do." We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where we used to have breakfast together every morning. Laughing and planning our day, now it felt like a battlefield. "What you saw," Jack began, "it's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Really? Because I think I saw my husband having dinner with another woman. I think I saw you kiss her." Was I hallucinating, Jack? He flinched at my tone. No, you weren't. But it's complicated. Then uncomplicate it for me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a deep breath. Her name is Sarah. She's a colleague. We've been working on a big story together. And that requires secret dinners and kissing. I couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice. No, of course not, he said quickly. That was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But something still didn't add up. If it was just work, why all the secrecy? Why lie about where you were going? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I didn't want you to worry. We've been working late a lot, and I know how you feel about me spending time with female colleagues. Don't you dare turn this around on me, I snapped. I've never had a problem with your female colleagues. I have a problem with you lying to me. We went back and forth like this for hours, Jack insisting it was a one-time thing, that he loved me, that he'd never meant to hurt me pointing out all the lies, all the suspicious behavior over the past few months. By the end of it, I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and still, I didn't know what to believe. I need time, I finally said, time to think, to process all of this. Jack nodded, looking relieved. Of course, whatever you need, I'll sleep on the couch. That night, alone in our bed, I tossed and turned, replaying everything in my mind. Could I forgive him? Should I? Was this really just a one-time mistake? Or was there more to it? The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions at work, plastering on a fake smile for my students. At home, Jack and I danced around each other, the tension thick in the air. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that our marriage was strong enough to survive this. But doubt had taken root in my heart, and I couldn't shake it. A week after that night, I was grading papers in the living room when Jack's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Before I could stop myself, I glanced at the screen. It was a text from Sarah. My heart racing, I picked up the phone. I knew it was wrong. Knew I should respect his privacy. But I had to know. The text read, "Miss you. Can't wait for our next work meeting, Sao." My hands shaking, I scrolled up through their conversation. It was full of flirty messages, inside jokes, plans to meet up. This wasn't just a one-time thing. This was an ongoing affair. When Jack came home that night, I was waiting for him, his phone in my hand. "Want to explain this?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. He looked at the phone, then at me, his face pale. "Sam, I can explain." But I was done with explanations, done with lies. "Don't bother," I said, tossing the phone at him. "I've seen enough." I grabbed my keys and my purse. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while. I need space to think." "Sam, please," Jack pleaded, reaching for me. "We can work this out. I love you." I stepped back, out of his reach. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this." As I drove to my sister's house, tears streaming down my face, I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, it was all a lie. But beneath the pain and the heartbreak, I felt something else stirring. Anger, determination. I'd given Jack everything, my love, my trust, my whole heart, and he'd thrown it all away for some cheap thrills with a colleague. Well, if he thought I was just going to roll over and take this, he had another think coming. I was Samantha Reed, and I was nobody's fool. If Jack wanted a war, he was going to get one. As I pulled up to my sister's house, I took a deep breath. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, and I was going to come out of this stronger than ever. After a few days at my sister's place, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to face this head on. But I also knew I needed more than just suspicions and a few text messages. If I was going to confront Jack, I needed hard evidence. So, I decided to change my tactics. No more crying, No more waiting around for explanations. It was time to get smart and gather some real proof. First things first, I needed to get back into our house without Jack knowing. Luckily, I had a spare key hidden at my best friend Lisa's place. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked when I told her my plan. "Maybe you should just talk to him." I shook my head. "I'm done talking. It's time for action." I waited until I knew Jack would be at work. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the front door, half expecting to find him there. But the house was empty, just as I'd hoped. I went straight to his office. If there was any evidence, it would be there. I started with his desk, rifling through drawers and papers. Nothing. Then I remembered Jack always kept important documents in a locked file cabinet. The key was usually in his desk drawer, but it wasn't there. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about the potted plant on his desk. The soil looked disturbed. On a hunch, I dug my fingers in and bingo, there was the key. My heart was pounding as I opened the cabinet. Most of it was just work stuff, contracts, story drafts, that kind of thing. But then, in the back of the bottom drawer, I found a small box. Inside were hotel receipts, dozens of them, all from the past few months. And they were all for the same hotel, always booked for just a few hours in the middle of the day. I felt sick. This wasn't just a one-time thing or even a brief affair. This was ongoing, planned, deliberate cheating. But I wasn't done. I booted up his computer, praying he hadn't changed the password. He hadn't. Same old password. My birthday. The irony made me want to scream. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I started going through his emails. Most were work-related. But then I found a separate email account I'd never seen before. The emails in this account made everything crystal clear. Messages to and from Sarah, planning their meetups, exchanging flirty banter, even some, let's just say, very explicit photos. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to cry. But most of all, I wanted justice. I took photos of everything, the hotel receipts, the emails, everything. Then I put it all back exactly as I'd found it. Jack wouldn't know I'd been there. As I was about to leave, a thought struck me. I went to our bedroom and opened my jewelry box. Sure enough, the diamond earrings Jack had given me for our anniversary were missing, the ones he'd said cost a fortune. I bet I knew where that money had really gone. I left the house feeling, I don't know, angry, hurt, vindicated, all of the above, I guess. But I also felt stronger. I had proof now. Real, undeniable proof. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what to do next. Confront Jack, leave him, go public with what I'd found. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Jack. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to catch him in the act. I called in sick to work again and staked out the house. Sure enough, around lunchtime, Jack came home. He was supposed to be covering a press conference across town. Liar. About 10 minutes later, another car pulled up. A woman got out, tall, blonde, Sarah. My blood boiled as I watched her walk up to our front door, bold as brass. I wanted to storm in there, to scream and shout and make a scene. But I held back. Instead, I took out my phone and started recording. I captured Sarah entering the house, the two of them appearing in the bedroom window, everything. After about an hour, Sarah left. I kept recording as Jack came out to kiss her goodbye. Right there, in broad daylight, in front of our house. The house we'd bought together, dreaming of the family we'd raised there. I waited until Sarah had driven away before I made my move. I marched up to the front door and let myself in. Jack was in the kitchen, humming to himself as he made a sandwich. He froze when he saw me. "Sam, what are you—" "I thought you were staying at your sister's." I held up my phone, the video still playing. Surprise. The color drained from his face. "Sam, I can explain." "Save it," I cut him off. "I've seen the emails, Jack. I've seen the hotel receipts. I've seen everything." He slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" I asked, my voice ice cold. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Both? I don't know. I never meant for this to happen. It got out of control. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Out of control. You've been sleeping with her for months, Jack, in our bed. That's not out of control, that's a choice. A choice you made over and over again. What are you going to do? He asked, his voice small. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. I'm leaving you, Jack, for good this time. I deserve better than this, better than you. As I turned to go, he called out, Is there anything I can do? Anything at all to fix this? I paused at the door and looked back at him. This man I'd loved, this man I'd trusted with my whole heart. You've done enough, I said, more than enough. And with that, I walked out, closing the door on that chapter of my life. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. It would be better than this. It had to be. After I left Jack, I felt, I don't know, liberated, terrified, both, I guess. I went back to my sister's place, my mind racing with everything that had just happened. I had the proof I needed, but now what? What was I supposed to do with it all? My sister found me sitting on her couch, staring blankly at the wall. Sam, what happened? I told her everything, the investigation, the evidence, the confrontation. By the end, she was fuming. That bastard, I'll kill him. I shook my head. No, I don't want revenge. I want justice. That's when an idea started forming in my head. Jack had taken so much from me, my trust, my love, my future, but I wasn't going to let him take my dignity too. The next day, I called a lawyer. I laid out everything I'd found, the receipts, the emails, the video. She listened carefully, taking notes. Mrs. Reed, she said when I finished, you have a very strong case for divorce. With this evidence, we can push for a favorable settlement. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. This was really happening. I was really ending my marriage. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into building my case. I gathered bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals, credit card bills with charges for gifts I'd never received. I even found receipts for jewelry, expensive stuff that I'd never seen. Each new piece of evidence was like a knife to my heart, but it also made me stronger. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about not letting Jack get away with what he'd done. One day, as I was going through some old photos for the lawyer, I came across one from our wedding day, Jack and I beaming at the camera, so in love. I felt a lump in my throat. Where had it all gone wrong? But then I remembered the look on Jack's face when I confronted him. The guilt, the fear, and underneath it all, the relief. He'd been caught, but part of him was glad it was over. Our marriage had been a lie for months, maybe even longer. That's when I knew I was doing the right thing. I deserved better than a man who could look me in the eye and lie day after day. I deserved honesty, respect, love, and if Jack couldn't give me that, well, I was better off without him. The lawyer called me in for a meeting a few days later. Mrs. Reed, she said, a smile playing on her lips, I think we have everything we need. Are you ready to file for divorce? I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm ready. We filed the papers that day. I felt a strange mix of emotions as I signed my name. Sadness for what I was losing, but also hope for what might come next. As I left the lawyer's office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jack. Can we talk? Please. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear what he had to say, but a bigger part knew that nothing he could say would change anything. The damage was done. I deleted the message without replying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, everything that was still to come. The divorce proceedings, the gossip at work, the pitying looks from friends. It was overwhelming. But then I remembered something my mom used to say. The darkest hour is just before the dawn. Maybe this was my darkest hour. Maybe things would get better from here. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter, somehow. Like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I got dressed, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at my sister's kitchen table. I had a lot to do: find a new place to live, sort out my finances, figure out how to tell my students why their teacher suddenly had a different last name. But as I sat there, sipping my coffee and making lists, I realized something. I was okay. Not great, not perfect, but okay. And for now, that was enough. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jack. "I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance." This time, I didn't hesitate. I blocked his number. As I did, I felt a surge of something, pride, strength. Whatever it was, it felt good. I was taking control of my life again. I was standing up for myself. I opened my laptop and started house hunting. New home, new start. That's what I needed. As I scrolled through listings, I caught sight of my reflection in the screen. There were dark circles under my eyes, and my hair was a mess. But there was something else too. A glint in my eye that I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination, resilience. I smiled at my reflection. "You've got this, Sam," I whispered to myself. "You've got this." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, and I was going to make it a good one. I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Lisa. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Want to go for a run? I could use some fresh air." As we jogged through the park, the sun warming my face, I felt a glimmer of excitement for the future. I didn't know what it held, but I knew one thing for sure. It was going to be on my terms. No more lies, no more compromises, just me being true to myself. And you know what? That felt pretty damn good. The day of the final confrontation arrived sooner than I expected. My lawyer called, saying we had a meeting with Jack and his attorney to discuss the terms of our divorce. My stomach was in knots, but I was ready. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. I chose my outfit carefully that morning. A crisp white blouse, tailored black pants, and my favorite pair of heels. I wanted to look strong, confident, like a woman who knew her worth. As I walked into the conference room, I saw Jack for the first time in weeks. He looked smaller somehow, less sure of himself. "Good. Sam," he said, starting to stand up. I held up a hand. "It's Samantha now, Jack. Let's keep this professional." His lawyer cleared his throat. "Well, shall we begin?" My lawyer nodded, pulling out a thick folder. "We have a proposal for the division of assets." But Jack interrupted. "Before we start, can I just say something?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Samantha, I'm so sorry for everything. I know I messed up, but I love you. Can't we just talk about this?" I took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to let out all the hurt and anger I'd been holding in. But I kept my cool. "We're beyond talking, Jack. You made your choices. Now we're here to deal with the consequences." His face fell. "But no," I cut him off. "No more lies, no more excuses. You want to talk? Fine. Let's talk about the hotel receipts I found, or the secret email account, or maybe the video I have of you and Sarah at our house." The color drained from his face. You know about all that?" I nodded. "I know everything, Jack, every lie, every betrayal." His lawyer leaned over, whispering something in his ear. Jack shook his head. "No, it's okay. I don't want to fight this." My lawyer raised an eyebrow. "You're agreeing to our terms?" Jack nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, whatever Samantha wants. She deserves that much." I should have felt victorious. This was what I wanted, right? A clean break. A fair settlement. But all I felt was empty. As our lawyers hashed out the details, I found myself studying Jack, the man I'd loved, the man I'd built a life with. How had we ended up here? Finally, it was done. Papers were signed, hands were shook, Just like that, my marriage was over. As we stood to leave, Jack caught my arm. "Samantha, wait, please. I know I don't deserve it, but can we talk? Just for a minute?" I hesitated. What more was there to say? But then I saw the desperation in his eyes. "Fine, 1 minute." We stepped out into the hallway. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. I want you to know how sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You never meant to hurt me. What did you think was going to happen, Jack? That I'd never find out? That I'd be okay with you sleeping with another woman in our bed?" He flinched at my words. I know it was wrong. I got caught up in it all. The excitement, the thrill. "And was it worth it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Was it worth throwing away our marriage? Our future?" He shook his head, tears in his eyes. "No. God, no. I'd give anything to take it back." For a moment, I felt a flicker of something, pity, regret. But then I remembered all the lies, all the pain. "Well, you can't. What's done is done." I turned to go, but Jack called out, "I still love you. You know, I always will." I paused, my hand on the door. Without turning back, I said, "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. Goodbye, Jack." And with that, I walked out of the building, out of my marriage, out of my old life. As I stepped onto the street, the sun warm on my face, I felt free, like I could finally breathe again. Sure, there was pain, there was anger, but underneath it all was a sense of possibility. A whole new life stretched out before me, full of potential. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. "How'd it go?" I smiled, typing back, "It's done, I'm free." Her reply came instantly. "Proud of you, sis. Want to celebrate?" I thought about it for a moment. Did I want to celebrate the end of my marriage? But then I realized I wasn't celebrating the end. I was celebrating a new beginning. "You bet," I texted back. "Meet you in 30. As I walked to my car, I caught sight of my reflection in a store window. There was a light in my eyes that I hadn't seen in months, a spark of hope, of determination. I smiled at my reflection. "You did it, Sam," I whispered to myself. "You stood up for yourself. You survived." And in that moment, I really knew, that I was going to be okay. More than okay, I was going to thrive. As I drove to meet my sister, I found myself singing along to the radio. For the first time in a long time, I felt happy, excited for what the future might hold. Sure, there would be tough days ahead, moments of doubt, of sadness, but I was stronger now. I knew my worth, and I was ready to face whatever came next. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a whole new chapter, and I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. After the confrontation with Jack, I thought I'd feel better, vindicated, triumphant. But as the days passed, I found myself sinking into a pit of despair. The reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I was alone. My marriage was over. The future I'd planned, the life I'd built, it was all gone. I tried to keep it together at work, plastering on a fake smile for my students, but inside, I was falling apart. Every little thing reminded me of Jack. The coffee mug he'd bought me, the photos on my desk, even the damn toaster we'd picked out together. One night, about a week after the divorce was finalized, I hit rock bottom. I was sitting on my sister's couch, scrolling through social media when I saw it. A photo of Jack and Sarah, looking cozy at some fancy restaurant. The caption read, "New Beginnings." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. While I was here wallowing in misery, they were out living their best lives. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. I don't remember much of what happened next. I know I drank too much wine. I know I cried until I thought I'd run out of tears. And I know I did something I'm not proud of. I called Jack. He answered on the third ring. "Samantha, are you okay?" His voice, so familiar yet now so foreign, broke something inside me. "No," I sobbed. "I'm not okay. How could you do this to me, Jack? How could you throw away everything we had?" There was a long pause. Then, "I'm sorry, Sam. I'm so sorry." But his apology just made me angrier. "Sorry doesn't fix this," I yelled. "Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you lied to me, that you cheated on me, that you didn't love me enough to stay faithful." "That's not true," he said, his voice low. "I did love you. I still do." I laughed bitterly. "If this is love, I want no part of it." We talked, argued, for what felt like hours. All the hurt, all the anger I'd been holding back came pouring out. I accused him of never really loving me. He swore he did, that he'd made a terrible mistake. Round and round we went, rehashing old wounds, creating new ones. By the time I hung up, I felt empty, drained, like I'd poured out every last bit of emotion I had. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of shame so deep I could barely breathe. What had I done? All that progress, all that strength I'd found, gone in one moment of weakness. I called in sick to work and spent the day in bed, replaying the conversation with Jack over and over in my mind. Why had I called him? What had I hoped to achieve? Closure. Reconciliation? I didn't even know anymore. As the days passed, I fell into a routine of sorts. Wake up, go to work, come home, cry, sleep, repeat. I stopped answering calls from friends. I skipped family dinners. I just existed. My sister tried to help. She'd drag me out for coffee or suggest we go for a run, but I could barely muster the energy to shower, let alone exercise. One day, about a month after the divorce, I was sitting in my classroom during lunch break, staring blankly at the wall. One of my students, a quiet girl named Emily, came in. "Ms. Reed?" she said hesitantly. "Are you okay?" I plastered on my fake smile. "Of course, sweetie, just thinking about lesson plans." She frowned, not buying it. "It's just, you seem sad lately, and I wanted to tell you something my mom always says when I'm sad." I raised an eyebrow, curious despite myself. "What's that?" "She says that sometimes, when things are really hard, you have to be your own hero, that you can't wait for someone else to save you. You have to save yourself." I felt tears prick at my eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, right? That's very wise, Emily. Thank you for sharing that with me." She smiled, gave me a quick hug, and left. I sat there, her words echoing in my mind. Be my own hero. Save myself. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about what Emily had said. I thought about the woman I used to be, strong, confident, full of life. Where had she gone? Had I let Jack take her when he left? No, I realized. I'd given her up willingly. I'd let myself become a victim, wallowing in self-pity and regret. But it was time to take her back. The next morning, I woke up early. For the first time in weeks, I went for a run. It was hard. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But with each step, I felt a little stronger. When I got home, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. The woman staring back at me was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. But there was something else there too. A glimmer of the old Samantha, a spark of determination. "Okay," I said to my reflection, "time to be your own hero." I spent the day cleaning my sister's guest room where I'd been staying. I opened the windows, letting in fresh air. I sorted through the boxes of stuff I'd brought from my old house with Jack, deciding what to keep and what to let go. It wasn't easy. Every item held a memory, good and bad. But as I worked, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about cleaning a room. It was about cleaning out the old, making space for the new. By the time I finished, I was exhausted. But for the first time in weeks, it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from hard work and purpose. That night, as I lay in bed, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I made a plan. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for my own place. I'd call my friends, apologize for disappearing. I'd start living again, not just existing. It wouldn't be easy. I knew there would still be hard days ahead, moments of doubt and sadness. But I also knew I was strong enough to face them, because Emily was right. I couldn't wait for someone else to save me. I had to save myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to try. The day I moved into my new apartment felt like the first day of the rest of my life. It was small, just a one-bedroom, but it was mine, all mine. No memories of Jack, no reminders of my failed marriage, just a blank slate, ready for me to fill with new experiences and new memories. As I unpacked my boxes, I found myself smiling, really smiling, not the fake one I'd been plastering on for months. It felt good. It felt right. My phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. "How's the new place? Need any help unpacking?" I hesitated for a moment, then replied, "It's great, and yes, I'd love some help. Bring wine." An hour later, Lisa was at my door, wine bottle in hand and a big grin on her face. "Look at you, all independent woman," she said, pulling me into a hug. We spent the evening unpacking, laughing, and catching up. It felt so normal, so healing. As we sat on my new, second-hand couch, sipping wine and surrounded by half-empty boxes, Lisa turned to me with a serious look. "I'm proud of you, you know," she said. "You've been through hell, but look at you now. You're thriving." I felt tears prick at my eyes, but for once, they weren't sad tears. "Thanks, Liz. I couldn't have done it without you." She squeezed my hand. "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know." Sam. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into work, revamping my lesson plans and starting a new after-school fitness program for the students. It felt good to be passionate about something again, to feel like I was making a difference. One Saturday morning, as I was out for my now regular morning run, I quite literally ran into someone. As I picked myself up off the ground, rubbing my sore elbow, I found myself face to face with a very concerned and very handsome man. "I'm so sorry," he said, helping me up. "Are you okay?" I nodded, suddenly very aware of how sweaty and disheveled I must look. "I'm fine. It was my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going." He smiled, and I felt my heart do a little flip. "Well, how about I buy you a coffee to make up for it? There's a great little cafe just around the corner." For a moment, I hesitated. Was I ready for this? But then I remembered my promise to myself. To live, not just exist. "You know what? That sounds great." His name was David, and he was a physical therapist. We ended up talking for hours, about everything and nothing. It was nice, easy, no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. As we said goodbye, David hesitated. "Listen, I know this might be too forward, but would you like to have dinner sometime?" I took a deep breath. "David, you seem really nice, but I need to be honest with you. I just got out of a really bad marriage. I'm not sure I'm ready for anything romantic right now." To my surprise, he just smiled. "I understand. How about we start as friends then? No pressure, just getting to know each other." I found myself smiling back. "I'd like that." Over the next few months, David and I did become friends. We'd meet for coffee, go for runs together, even started volunteering at the local animal shelter. It was nice, having someone in my life who didn't know the old me, who didn't look at me with pity or concern. But more importantly, I was rediscovering myself. I started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time for when I was with Jack. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones. I even started a blog about my experiences, hoping to help other women who might be going through similar situations. One day, about 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Jack at the grocery store. For a moment, I felt that old familiar pain in my chest. But then I really looked at him. He looked tired, worn down. Nothing like the confident, charming man I'd married. "Samantha," he said, his voice hesitant. "How are you?" I was surprised to realize that I didn't feel anger or sadness, just nothing. "I'm good, Jack. Really good." He nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. That's great. I'm happy for you." As we said our awkward goodbyes, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I realized that I truly had moved on. Jack was my past, and I was ready to embrace my future. That night, as I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset and sipping a glass of wine, I thought about how far I'd come, from the broken woman who cried herself to sleep every night to this, a strong, independent person who was finally living life on her own terms. My phone buzzed, a text from David. "Hey, want to catch a movie tomorrow night?" I smiled, typing back, "Sounds great, it's a date." And you know what? For the first time in a long time, the idea of a date didn't scare me. I was ready to trust again, ready to open my heart, not to David necessarily, who knew where that would go, but to life, to possibilities, to love in all its forms. As I watched the last rays of sun disappear below the horizon, I raised my glass in a silent toast to new beginnings, to second chances, to being my own hero, because that's what I'd become, really. I'd saved myself. I'd faced my fears, my pain, my doubts, and I'd come out stronger on the other side. This wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the future I'd imagined when I said I do to Jack all those years ago. But you know what? It was better, because it was authentically, unequivocally mine. And as I sat there, watching the stars come out one by one, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was exactly where I was meant to be, and the best was yet to come.